Hey everybody, it's Matt. Welcome back to the Journey Church podcast. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can automatically get our weekly episodes. And you might want to go ahead and subscribe to our Journey YouTube channel as well. You'll find messages, music, interviews, inspiring stories, and more for you all right there. Now, I hope this episode helps you take your next step in following Jesus.
Today, I want to talk about this word for the next few minutes, luck. I know everybody's got a different perspective on luck, okay? So don't get hung up on this. Some of you may have a worldview where you think everything's luck. Some of you may think there's nothing, luck doesn't even exist. There's no luck. And some of you may be in the middle. It doesn't really matter for these purposes. The reason I want to talk about this is because of something author and student and teacher Jim Collins wrote about. I don't know if you're familiar with Jim Collins. He spent his life understanding what makes great companies tick. He's a well-known business speaker and business author who's written a lot of books. In his book, Great by Choice, he talks about the fact that there are three kinds of luck in life. Now, Jim's not a follower of Jesus, so this is just his perspective, okay? And some of you might say, well, it's not luck, but that's okay. This is just where he's coming from. He says there are three types of luck in life. There's what luck, how luck, and who luck. Now, he defines what luck this way. He says what luck is just all the stuff that happens to us and we don't really have any control over it. So it may be a negative thing. You know, you may get sick, you may find out you have cancer, you may X, Y, or Z, and it just happened to you. From his point of view, that's like what luck? It just happened. You don't have any control over it, but it's a negative and you got to deal with it. Or it can be positive, like you get a phone call and you answer it and somebody says, hey, guess what? You've inherited a lot of money. You didn't know was coming your way. That's the best kind of luck, isn't it? So, anywhere in between. All the stuff that happens to us in life, his point, which he's right on, his point is we have very little, if any, control over the whats that happen to us in life. So he says there's what luck, but then there's how luck. How luck is how you and I respond to the whats that happen to us. And again, we've got a little bit of control over this. We definitely have control over how we respond. What we don't have control over is how our response ends up. In other words, we have zero control over the outcome of our response. So you may try to take the high road in a situation or do the right thing in a situation, even though it's hard. You're going to respond in the right way, but you actually have no control over whether that response will benefit you or pay off in some way down the road. You can control your response. You can't control the outcome of it. But then he says there's this third kind of luck, as he calls it, and it's who luck. And he's obviously coming from a worldview where it's a bit random, and if it happens to you, it just happens to you. But he says from his point of view, hey, who luck is the luck that you have the most control over. Here's actually what he writes about it in Great by Choice. He writes this: one of the things that I believe in is you get not just luck in life, but who luck. And he defines it this way. Who luck is when you come across somebody who changes your trajectory, or they invest in you, bet on you, or give you guidance and key points. And Collins calls this the most valuable kind of luck you can have. Now, again, I don't want you to get hung up on the word luck because depending on your, point of view and your worldview, you may view how luck intersects with your life a totally different way. But it doesn't matter. The point is whether it's a factor of life, a part of life. Collins is right about the fact that who is around you, the people that you have a relationship with, the connections you have, they are often the most valuable thing that you experience in life. It's the most valuable piece of the puzzle, if you will. And unlike what happens to you, and to some extent, unlike the outcomes of how you respond to it, the people in your life, the people around you, you have a whole lot of control over that. You have a whole lot of control of whether you're putting yourself in a position and initiating relationships with people that are going to be the kind of people that Collins describes, the kind of people who are actually going to help you get better. And I think the reason he calls it the most valuable kind of luck is because if you have the right who's in your life, you can handle number one and number two. If you have the right who, you can handle whatever happens to you and you can respond in a much better way to it if you just got the right kind of encouragement. So if you weren't here last week, we started this series called Better Begins Here. Better Begins Here. And I asked you a question. The question has created some conversation because a lot of you have talked to me about it. The question I gave you was simply, what are you holding on to that's holding you back? Because we all tend to have something. We all have ideas of where we want to be better in life, and things may be really good for you, but you don't want things to regress. You don't want whatever parts of your life are going well to get worse. So we're all rooting for things to get better in our lives. But the reality is, for most all of us, we are holding on to something that is holding us back, that's weighing us down, that we're having to work around, that's keeping us from getting to the better that we want to get to. Which is really ironic because in many cases we know the thing that's keeping us from being better and we won't let go of it. And what I suggested last week is the reason we won't let go of it is because it actually has control of us. It's mastered us, if you will. And none of us like to admit that. We don't even like to think that's true, which is why we're like, well, I can quit that whenever I want. I can let go of that and stop that whenever I want. But the reality is if you know something is keeping you from the better you want to be, and yet you will not let go of it, there's got to be more to it than just, I want better, but I don't want to let go of that to get it. There's got to be more at play. And Jesus said there was more at play. Jesus said, there's some things that get their hold on you and you can't shake them. You can't get rid of them without his help, which is why he invites all of us to grab hold of him and to follow him, not to believe in him. Again, believing's important. That's the first step, but believing's pretty simple. Following, well, that's more difficult. Following requires me to reorient my entire life around Jesus' values and his way of life. It's to sync the rhythm of my life up with his way of life. Following requires changing some things in my life. It requires in every area of life saying, well, Jesus, if you were me, what would you do? Now, best I understand, I'm going to try to do that. I mean, that's a totally different deal. That's a much deeper level of commitment. But he said, if you will grab hold of me and actually follow me, first of all, I will give you the power to let go of whatever's holding on to you. Secondly, I will lead you to the better that you're actually wanting because Jesus' whole point is if you'll follow me, I'll help you be the person God created you to be, which is the very best version of yourself. But Jesus also said, ironically enough, if you will grab hold of me, which is another way of saying surrender to me, if you will surrender to me, I'm going to give you freedom. Whatever you've surrendered to over here, it is not leading you to freedom. But if you'll let go and surrender to me, I will give you the freedom that you actually are looking for. So, some of us, those of us who were here last week, have been wrestling through, what are some things I'm holding on to I need to let go of? And for all of us, we have some of those. Next week, just to give you a little bit preview, next week we are going to talk about how to stick to decisions that you make that are going to be in your best interest, but you have a hard time sticking to them. Have you ever found yourself in that situation? There's a habit you wanted to develop, some change you wanted to make, something new you wanted to do with your life, and you just had a hard time actually following through on it and, sticking to it in the long run. Does anybody struggle with that? No? Okay. 2 people. Thank you. The rest of you are liars. Yeah, exactly. The rest of you are liars. We all deal with that, don't we? We all deal with that. So anyway, next week, if you've ever found yourself, which you have, in that position, next week we're going to talk about the secret or the key to how to stick to the great decisions you have made about your own life that you knew would make you better, but you've struggled to stick to them. We're going to figure out the secret to that. But the reason I'm not talking about that today is between whatever it is that's holding you back in your past or in your present, and whatever it is that you need to change and stick to in your future, between those two things is the one thing that's connected to all of it, the one thing that's a linchpin of all of it, and is the people in your life. So for the next few minutes, I want to try to help you process your circle of who's. I want to try to help you process where your circle of who's are taking you. And the reason I want to take a whole Sunday to do this, and for some of you may be like, well, this is such common sense, because you tell students this, teenagers this, young adults, you've told other people this, but I'm telling you, just because you've told somebody else and understand it doesn't mean you're practicing it yourself. The reason I want to talk about it is because whenever there's a change we want to make to get better, we all have a tendency to focus on the what's and the how's. This is where we spend most of our time. Think about it. If you want to start eating healthier, what do? You immediately think about, well, what diet plan or what eating plan am I going to need in order to be healthier? And you figure out the what, you figure out what that is, and then you start figuring out, well, how am I going to do that? I got to come up with the plan now. How am I going to have the food I need, or how am I going to have time to cook the meals, or how am I going to, whatever. You think about the what's and the how's. That's where you give all your time. If you're single and you want to meet someone, you spend most of your time thinking about the what and the how. Like, what kind of person am I wanting to meet? What kind of person do I want to be in a relationship with? And then how am I going to meet them? And you come up with all the different plans, right? How could you meet somebody like that? If you're in debt and you want to get out of debt, same thing. You're thinking, okay, what do I need to do differently to get out of debt? What's my plan to get out of debt? And then how am I going to do it? How am I going to practice it? How am I going to make sure I pay this debt down? It's just natural. This is what we all tend to do. I want to think about the what and the how. Ironically enough, research has shown the number one predictor of success for you to change your life for the better is not the what or the how, though. It's the who. The number one predictor of success of whether you're going to get better in life are the people around you. That's what research has found. Now, you know this anecdotally, but research has proven scientifically this is true because who you listen to influences you. Who you listen to influences what you do. The people you surround yourself with are a preview of the future you. Whoever you surround yourself with, spend the most time with, you're going to become like. God has wired us this way. We cannot help but keep it from happening. That is the kind of relational influence people have in all of our lives. So to focus on the what and the how, that's good and that's important. But if you really want change for the better, you got to have the right who's in your life. You got to have a circle of people around you who are moving in the direction or have arrived at the destination that you want to arrive at in terms of being better in any single area of your life. Now, this is not a new concept that Jim Collins introduced to the world. This is something that God designed us to operate this way. It's been true for us from the beginning. And 2,000 years ago, the author of Hebrews addressed this very idea. Let me just show you what he said real quick. Here's what he wrote. He said, let's hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised, talking about Jesus, he who promised is faithful. Now, this was just his way of saying, okay, if you want change for the better, you got to let go of whatever you're holding on to. It's holding you back. Talked about that. You got to hold on to Jesus. You got to hold on to his promises. You got to hold on to his way of life. But he said the key is you got to hold unswervingly. And you don't have to admit this, but if we could all be honest for a minute, I think we could admit, whenever we try to do the right thing and change or make changes in some area of our life, unswervingly is not exactly the word we would use to describe ourselves, is it? It's more like I do good for a little bit and then I mess up for a while and then I try to come back to it and then I fail again and then I come back to it off and on. You know how you hold unswervingly to a new change in your life? How you hold unswervingly to a new direction in your life? Well, the author of Hebrews is about to tell us it has everything to do with the people around you, the people around me, which makes perfect sense. Let me stop and think about it. Do you think you're ever going to have a better marriage if the circle of people around you that you spend the most time with are all miserable in their marriage? Do you think if you're single, you're ever going to meet the kind of person that you want to meet and have a healthy dating relationship if all the people you hang out with or in relationships are the exact opposite of what you want? I mean, you ever think you're going to get out of debt if all the people around you that you spend most of your time with are just drowning in debt? You ever think you're going to eat healthy if your best friend offers you a pint of Ben & Jerry's every time you're together? By the way, that is not a friend you should get rid of. I don't want you to misunderstand me, okay? It's a really valuable friend. I wish I had one like that. But anyway, my point is, that's the kind of influence, right? You're just naturally going to become and move in the direction of the people who are around you, which is why the author of Hebrews says, let me give you some advice. If you want to hold unswervingly to Jesus and his direction to live a better life, then here's what you do. He says, let us consider how we can spur one another on toward love and good deeds. And, he says, not giving up meeting together, some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. And all the more as you see the day approaching, which is just his way of saying, listen, we all have a limited amount of time. So he said, if you actually want to get where you say you want to get in life, if you want to be the person that God created you to be, you don't have forever to get there. So you better understand there is a relational component to this. God did not design you to do this on your own. God did not design following Jesus to be a solo sport, okay? It's not a solo adventure. It's all about relationships. It's all about relationships. As a matter of fact, God designed this principle to be true for all of us. Spiritual growth happens best through relationships. This is what the author of Hebrews is trying to tell us. You can't be who God created you to be and get where you want to be in life without being surrounded by people who are either already there or they are moving in the same direction you want to be moving in. You just can't do it any other way because God designed us to reflect and be influenced by the direction of the people around us. Now, just real quick side, and then we'll come back to this. This is one of the principles, by the way, that we have built our entire strategy as a church around, because we know this is true. So starting in preschool, and then K through 5th grade, and 6th through 8th grade, and our high schoolers, all the way up to you, all of us adults, we have built everything around helping people build relationships with others who are moving in the same direction they want to move in. If you observe or watch, if you've ever been on What's Next tour, and you've seen what we do with our preschool, elementary, and our students, whatever, one of the things you notice is there are adults in their lives every single week. It's a small group of 6 to 8 kids with a couple of adults. We've designed everything this way. And they spend more time together as a group processing what they're learning than they do sitting there listening to somebody on a stage tell them what they should know. It's why when everybody says, you do Sunday school for kids, I have a visceral reaction. It's partly because I'm Southern Baptist growing up too. So anyway, it just gives me flashbacks. But I'm like, no. It's more than Sunday school, because Sunday school, and nothing wrong with this, but Sunday school is about, hey, let me just stand up here and give you some information you need to know. What we're trying to do, because we understand this principle, what we're trying to do is help kids and students and all of us. Sure, you got to know the content. You got to have the knowledge. But the only way you apply the knowledge consistently is when you're surrounded by other people who are going to encourage you and who are also trying to apply the knowledge. And together, you're moving in the same direction. Now, you guys intuitively understand this when it comes to other people, especially kids, younger generations. You get this. I was talking to somebody between services, and we're kind of joking about it, but the individual looked at me and was like, well, you know what you just talked about, that's pretty much common sense. It was his way of saying, why did you even talk about that? And I was like, well, the point is, we see it in other people's lives. But who's in your circle? And what direction are they taking you? Because for us, we think, well, I've outgrown that. I'm not in that stage and season of life anymore. Other people that I'm surrounded with, they don't influence me in that way. And I'm telling you, they do. They influence me as well. And if I want to be who God created me to be and get where God wants me to go, if I want to be better, better begins by surrounding myself with people who are moving in the direction I want to go, or they are better in the area I want to be better in. So here's a question that I hope you'll spend a little bit of time, not dismissing because, it's just simple. I hope you'll spend a little bit of time processing and answering. The question is, who in your life regularly encourages you to love God and people better? Who in your life regularly encourages you to love God and people better? I want you to think about your circle. Everybody's got one. Your circle of friends who you spend the most time with, who you text the most, talk to the most, whatever it is. Where are they moving you? Who's encouraging you to love God and to love people better? To be more practical and more specific, who's encouraging you to be more generous? It's really hard if you want to become more generous. It's really hard to get more generous if you're surrounded by people who don't practice generosity, because they will not encourage your generosity. They'll tell you you're crazy. Why would you do that? They'll encourage selfishness. They'll encourage greed. And not even intentionally, not because they're bad people. It's just because that's who they are. If you want a better marriage, you cannot surround yourself with people who are miserable in their marriage. You can't surround yourself with people who are saying, you know what, we're just holding on for the kids, but once kids are out of the house, or I'm just holding on until his parents die and we get the inheritance, because then there's more to split 50-50. If you're surrounded by people like that, you are not going to end up with a better marriage. If you're wanting a healthy dating relationship, same thing applies. If you're wanting to be a better student and you surround yourself with people who are always trying to get you to play video games or go to the party or do whatever when you ought to be studying, you're never going to be a better student. You know how you become a better student? You actually get some friends who like to study. That sounds really boring, doesn't it? But you find some friends who like to study, who are going to be like, hey, let's prep for that test. You're like, who does that? Well, somebody does. They're typically the ones with A's in the class, but that's a whole nother issue. You find somebody who they are, or they're moving in the direction that you want to move. If you want to get out of debt, you need to find some people who have great financial habits that you spend plenty of time with. Now, just to be clear, I am not insinuating, I am not suggesting that you should ditch whatever friends you have if they don't regularly encourage you and move you in the direction of loving God and people better. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is you may need to introduce some more people into your circle. Because if you want to get better at forgiveness, and all the people currently in your circle are great at holding grudges, and they actually encourage you to hold a grudge, to be resentful, to be bitter, to get revenge, you're never going to get better at forgiving. And if you want to be better at having patience and controlling your temper, and you're surrounded by friends who are always angry, guess what? You're going to stay angry. You are. Because we are all products of our environments to some extent, our relational environments. So, what I would encourage you to do is think about where you want to be better in life. And then ask yourself, do I currently have some people who are a regular weekly part of my life who are already better where I want to be better? Or who at least want to be better the way I want to be better, and they're moving in the same direction as me? Because you will not get where you want to go unless that's true. Now, it just so happens, I don't know how this worked out, it just so happens if you don't know where to turn for that, we got a couple options this week you can check out. I don't know how all this lined up. If you are somebody who you're trying to figure out faith, this is one of the places you want to get better. You're new to faith, you're coming back to church after a long time, you got all kinds of questions and doubts, maybe you don't believe, and you're like, but I've just never had a place where I can get my questions answered or talk about my doubts. We have an environment that we call Starting Point. And on January 28th, on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, out there in the Starting Point room, which is in the atrium, we're going to do an orientation where you can learn about it. But here's the short pitch for it. We take all of us who have questions and doubts and we aren't sure, we're trying to figure it out. We put you in a room together. And we take somebody who's been where you are and has gone through Starting Point, and we say, why don't you facilitate a discussion, and together y'all explore all the doubts and questions. And so if you learn about it on the 28th and you're like, I think I want that, it's 4 weeks in February that you'll do this. And the content is helpful. But you know what's most powerful? It's that all of you who are in the same or similar stages of life, but you're all wanting to move in the same direction with your faith, you're all there doing it together. For the rest of us, you're thinking, well, I would love to grow in this area, but as I evaluate, I don't think I have anybody in my life who's where I want to be. Let me tell you what I would encourage you to do if you're not already in one of our small groups. I would encourage you to come this Wednesday night to our short-term groups. They're really laid back. It's from 7 to 8 p.m. right here in the building. And basically, while you're going to get some good content that's going to help you grow and be better, the ultimate value of this are the people you meet who are trying to grow in the same area you're trying to grow. It's only 3 weeks, so it's not a lot of commitment. But what it does do is get you moving in the same direction with some people you know want to move in that direction too. So if you're a couple, we've got 3 weeks on emotional health, which, by the way, guys, when they told me that, I was like, you're not making all of us guys talk about our feelings. We're not doing that. And they assured me, no, we're not going that direction. This is helping us understand how what's going on internally impacts how we live and how we relate to other people. Sounds like something we could all use a little help with. So if you're a couple, you can go to that for 3 weeks. If for you women, we're offering a thing called Breathing Room. Here's basically what Breathing Room is about. If you are a lady and you feel like your entire life is overwhelmed because you got so much you're juggling, so much you're taking care of, and that's probably not true for most of you, at least most of you who are married, because we husbands carry most of the load at home, so y'all don't have, I don't know why anybody's laughing at that. Anyway, maybe we're not carrying as much as we think, and you're pretty, you're juggling work and home and everything else. This is for you. Again, this is for you. It'll give you some great tips and some practical things to help you develop breathing room in your life. 3 weeks. But again, the value is you're doing it with a group of women who are all trying to get better and move in the same direction in an area of their life. So if you don't have this, if you're like, I could use a little more of it, just go on our app, scan the QR code in the seat in front of you, and register. It's free. It's all free. Register for a Starting Point orientation or register for a short-term group this Wednesday night right here. And begin to put some of those people in your life because, again, listen, you do not have any control over what happens to you in the next 12 months. You have some control over how you respond to it, but you don't have any control over the outcome of your responses. But I'll tell you what you have total control over. It's whether you put yourself in places and environments where you connect with people relationally, who are going to encourage and support you to respond the right way, to make the wise choices, to develop the habits and stick to them, to be better in the areas you want to be better in. You are no different than me. We all need people who are going to help us let go of what's holding us back. Let go of what's weighing us down. Let go of the stuff that we just keep working around. Jesus says, if you'll begin to follow me, I designed you not to follow me in isolation. I designed you to follow me in community. We're better together. Life is better when we do it together. And we're all better at following Jesus when we do it together. So whether you find that through a small group here, through a short-term group, through Starting Point, or you've got your own way, it's fine. It's fine. But would you take a few minutes this week to think about your circle? Are the people in that circle, are they moving in the direction you want to move to be better? Are they better in the areas you hope to be better? If not, you need to add to your circle. You will never get where God wants you to be and be who He created you to be unless you have the right people around you. And if by chance you kick your Ben and Jerry's friend out, send them my way. I'll put them in my circle for you, all right? Let's pray together. Father, it's a lot easier to see in other people than it is to see in ourselves. And so for all of us who have a tendency to dismiss this and go, I'm fine, everything's good, or I can handle it, I can do it myself, our history proves, the reality is, it's not true. So would you help us to have enough wisdom to do what we can do, which is to put ourselves in places, in experiences, around people who are better where we want to be better, who are growing in the ways we want to grow, so that we're not trying to do it alone. Jesus, most of all, thank you for giving us the ability to let go of the things that have control of us. Thank you for leading us down the road to better when we follow you. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Hey, if you'd like more content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our Journey app to access all of our recent message content. And our app is the easiest way to share this content with a friend. For more information on our church or to find our app or our YouTube channel, just visit JourneyCalway.com. That's JourneyCalway.com. Thanks for listening.